I would say my sense of purpose has definitely shifted in the last couple of years. When I started Impact This Day, it was hugely successful, I guess, financially.
Yeah.
And it was quite unexpected because, as I mentioned, it was in 2008. And so fast forward to I started the company in October of 2008. By March of 2009, it wasn't just about the money, but I had made more money in that time frame than I had ever made in a year. It was more of a process. It probably started in around 2021. And I was feeling this calling to close my business. And yet I was fighting it because my business was my identity.
Right.
And as each year that went by, it was clearer and clearer that God was telling me it was time to close the business. I think it would be scarier to me now than it was then. It's interesting. And I really just had this view that I could do anything.
Was there a place that you looked for courage, or it was just inside you? How did you be so courageous at a time where, man, I'm stepping out? Where did the courage come from?
I don't know how to explain it, but this faith, and I think it came from God, that it would all work out. I'm sure that it came from Him.
Welcome back to Keep Shining with Stuart MacMillan. Each month we explore leadership, purpose, and influence. And this month's theme is New Beginnings, stories of renewal and purpose. My guest today is very special to me. Deb Squier is a veteran executive recruiter with more than 25 years of experience partnering with some of the world's largest and most respected direct selling companies. But throughout her career, she's helped organizations identify and place top leadership talent across sales, marketing, operations, and executive management. Her work has connected purpose-driven companies with leaders who build people-centered cultures and have a lasting impact. Now, as the co-founder of the Lighthouse Collective, Deb continues to champion meaningful connections and inspire others to begin new chapters in business and in life. And we have enough new beginnings between us in business and life that we're going to sort of explore today.
Keep shining, be alive. You were made to be a lighthouse, shine bright. Keep shining, be alive.
Deb, welcome.
Thank
Glad
you.
to have you here. Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting interview in as much as, I probably know a lot of the answers, and I may dig a little deeper than normal because I know where some of the things are buried that we need to get out and let people know. So we are the product of a second marriage. We talk about new beginnings a lot. We pray about it. We thank God regularly for each other. When you think back, though, to one of your biggest new beginnings, what actually comes to mind?
Wow, that's a great question. There has been a number of new beginnings.
Yeah.
Before I met you, and then several since we've been together. But probably what comes to mind right away, one of the biggest new beginnings was when I started Impact This Day. That came at a critical time in my life. I had just was recently divorced. The company that I was working for was slowly winding down. And so I was looking to start something new, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. And then I had the opportunity of speaking with someone named a mentor, John Dara, who asked me what was I intending to do. We were talking about potentially I was going to start a new business instead of just looking for another job. And I told him, well, I'm going to start something sometime next year. And John's like, well, that's not a goal. You have to have a specific time and date of what you're going to do. When are you going to start this new business? And so I said, well, I'm going to start it in January. This was in October. This was in August of 2008.
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, I'm going to start it in January." And immediately I was like, "Why did I say that? I didn't even know what kind of business I was going to start." I knew it was something along the lines of maybe a speakers bureau, because at the time that's what I was doing. I had started and ran a speakers bureau for a training company. And I just said it. And then, wouldn't you know,
Blurted it out.
I just blurted it out. And then October 2008, so just a few months later, I actually quit my job and started Impact This Day.
How cool is that? And Impact This Day became pretty famous in the direct selling. You won a couple of awards with that as a supplier of excellence, I think, and a few other things, became very well recognized in the channel. But what did that transition, which is pretty major, going from being an employee to starting your own business, what did that teach you about risk and perhaps about faith?
It taught me a lot. First of all, I had been getting a paycheck. Just for my whole life, it was I worked for someone else. I had a steady paycheck every other week. And when you step out and you start your own business, there isn't a paycheck, and it's all on you. You're not getting something from your employer. And so I had to take a big risk and just step out without any paycheck and know that I had to make it work. And I also had been praying about it. I had been far from God for a while, and during this transition, God was wooing me back to him. I don't know, that's how I would say it, because, and so I was drawing closer and closer to him, and I think I was more in tune with him, and I was listening, and that's how this company came about. Was I just felt like God was calling me to do something on my own, and I committed the company to a bigger purpose than just a paycheck as well. And I made that promise to God, and he blessed me. He blessed the business for many, many years.
You said something interesting about I had to make it work. And I think, oftentimes we hedge our bet a little bit. Like when we're doing something new, we kind of go, okay, we have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Just in case I mean, you and I have talked about that even in marriage, that, you have to be all in, and you got to sort of, that song by, the Australian band about, burn the bridges, right? Burn the ships, there's no turning back. So was that like when you're starting Impact This Day and you're going, I'm burning the ships, I'm doing this, I have to make it work? Was that kind of scary? How'd you deal with that?
It was scary. I think it would be scarier to me now than it was then. It's interesting because I was, that was 20 years ago almost, and I was younger, and I really just had this view that I could do anything. I don't know. I was I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I thought that I was just going to start this company. I thought I was going to start this company, and it would just all work out. I had this, I don't know how to explain it, but this faith, and I think it came from God, that it would all work out. I'm sure that it came from him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And in that you find courage. I mean, courage is a kind of a cool word. Was there a place that you looked for courage, or it was just inside you? How did you be so courageous at a time where, man, I'm stepping out. I don't have a job. I'm just going to do this. Where did the courage come from?
Well, I think first of all, the courage mainly came from my faith in God, but it also came from people around me. So I had many people around me that were encouraging me. You were one of them. You, and as I mentioned, John Dara was encouraging me. I had people that I knew in my professional space that were also, many of them that were encouraging me. And I had people that discouraged me as
I
well.
know. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, well, that's okay. You know what? You said don't start a business, because I actually started my business, and if you think about it, it was October of 2008, and it changed a bit because I thought I was starting a speakers bureau, and what I ended up starting was I called it a people company, but it was an executive search business and a speakers bureau. Our tagline was connecting the right people with the right company, whether that was a permanent employee or a speaker for a one-time event or even a temporary employee. So that
Right.
was, I started the company that way. And I had a couple of people that said not to start it because in October 2008, our country was in big trouble with the economy.
Yeah. The
And
economy took a big dive in 2008. Yeah. Housing
yeah,
prices just fell through the floor, and yeah, it was
companies weren't
um,
companies weren't hiring, and I was starting a company to hire people. And so the interesting thing
it's
is that
bold.
in the industry that you and I both are in and where we met, when the economy is bad, a lot of times the direct selling industry picks up. And
Right.
so I went ahead and I started the business.
That's cool. So throughout your life, you've experienced seasons of change. A lot of things that happen in your life have required courage and faith. And I guess you've evolved even in the, 20 years that we've known each other. How have those moments, the seasons of change, how have those moments helped you grow and given you even more, perhaps a sense of purpose?
I would say that I've grown in the fact that I worry less. I mean, I still
Mhm.
worry, but I was an anxious mess years ago, and
Yeah.
so I'm not as that person anymore,
Mhm.
and I am more willing to just embrace change and excitedly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it helps that you've embraced change and positive things have come out of that, right?
Hmm.
It's funny because obviously as husband and wife, we know each other, and you did have this um, almost like a catastrophizer sort of scenario. Your daughter Tasha and I, when we worked together at Impact This Day, would we had a little signal as you started to spiral into, well, if that happens, then this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and you just don't have that anymore, which is pretty cool. Like, it's
Hmm.
pretty cool. And why do you think you don't have that anymore?
Because I've put my trust in God much more. My faith is a lot stronger than it was 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it anything else.
Yep.
That's the only thing that has changed, is that I've just grown deeper in my faith and closer to God.
So when you think about your own new beginnings, those that have happened over the years, what surprised you the most about where they've led you, or actually who you've become through them?
Hmm. Well, I know with Impact This Day, I was surprised just by the fact that I wasn't very confident
Mhm.
prior to starting that company. And it developed a confidence in me that I didn't know that I had.
Do you feel like if you look back at Deb from 2008 and Deb today in 2026, what what's the biggest differences? What are the biggest differences between Deb of 2008 and Deb of 2026?
The Deb of 2008 was more concerned about what other people thought about me. And
Mm,
the Deb of 2026 is I'm not that person anymore. I'm just
yeah.
concerned about what my creator thinks about me. I want
Okay.
my family, it's important for what my family, I want to be the best wife, the best grandma. My grandkids call me Maga. I want to be the best, friend, mom, and I want all of those people to love me, but it's not the most important thing. And sometimes I would do things that didn't serve me to
Yeah.
be to make people like me, or I
Right.
was concerned about them liking me, so I wouldn't do things because I was afraid
Right.
I was going to screw up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think, you're talking about the things that you talked about in terms of transition are actually about becoming as opposed to having or even
Mhm.
doing. Like they're really like the stuff when we talk about 2008 versus 2026, you're talking about who you are versus what you have, right? And that's a major transition as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because actually, I mean, back in 2008, I was just thinking about when I started Impact This Day. I, I wanted it to have an impact, but I needed to have an income.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm more about how can I have the biggest impact. I mean, that's really what I'm focused on.
Well, it's interesting. That's a nice lead in because when we interview people on Keep Shining, we talk often about purpose and influence. And I would ask you, how have your new beginnings, and there's been a number of them, how have they reshaped your sense of purpose and calling?
Well, I would say my sense of purpose has definitely shifted in the last couple years.
Okay.
From 2023 to now, in 20 I it was more of a process. It probably started in 20 around 2021. And
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling this calling to close my business.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I was fighting it because my business was my identity.
Right.
And as each year that went by, it was clearer and clearer that God was telling me it was time to close the business, and I was fighting it. And then in 2023 I did make that decision. And then from then on it sort of felt like I was in a limbo, like, because I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't know what was next. But what I
Mm-hmm.
did know for sure was that I wanted to do something that was more really service oriented, that was helping other people, and where I could really like be the best grandmother. Like, that's something that's come out of this, is that I'm starting a grandparenting. I call it a ministry at my
Mm-hmm.
church,
Mm-hmm. Talk
and
about that. Well, how did that come about? And what are you excited about with that? It's a new beginning as well.
it's a new beginning. I'm super excited about it. It came out of a conference that I went to. One of those other God things. This conference kept coming across my feed, and it was like, I've never even heard of this. It was called the Hope Together Conference, and it was for Christian counselors and disciplers and coaches, and I was none of
None of
those
which you
things.
saw yourself as, right?
No, I was like, why am I getting this? But after I saw it the third or fourth time, and I've been praying about what God had for me to do next, I I clicked on it. I decided I talked to you about it. You encouraged me to pray about it. I prayed about it. I felt very strongly that I needed to go. And so I went, and it was phenomenal. And
Mm-hmm.
while I was at that conference, I met this organization that they help you establish grandparent ministries within your community. And it really resonated with me and touched me. And I went back and started praying and reading about it. And I approached my church, and they're they're for it. I'm going to start a small group in January, and we'll see where that goes. I'm and it just It's a big step for me because I've never done anything like that. I haven't led a group, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
nervous, but I know that's where God's calling me right now.
So once again, you have a sense of courage that because you're stepping out and doing something new again. It's another new beginning. I think for the purposes of the people who are listening, you intrigue me about like this idea of how important grandparenting is. So maybe jump into that a bit. Obviously, we share 5 grandchildren together, and who knows how many more to come. But what does this ministry, what does this mission, why is it so important to you?
As a grandparent, I get to be that example. I don't replace their parent, but I get to actually still be that example for them. And for example, in our case, we take our grandchildren to church every Sunday, and
Mm-hmm.
They love going, and that's just sort of that first step.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in it's leadership or it's mentorship, and I think one of the things that you and I talk about a lot, not just in grandparenting, but is being purposeful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not just being an accidental grandparent, right? Or just kind of going with the flow, but we do talk about it. We pray about it. We want to be grandparents that are purposeful. Like this is what we're going to do. This is the influence we want to have. This is the impact that we want to have on our grandchildren. So I think it's really cool, and I'm excited to see not just what it does for you, but what it does for the people in your group, like where they get to go. Okay, and there's tools and I think, right, like the group
Yes.
that you had,
Yeah.
like it has all sorts of different tools and
There's
books like you're reading, you share with me on a regular basis. So
They have books, they have podcasts, they have events just for grandparents.
yeah,
And I
that's
think
pretty
it's
cool.
something that they said it's an underserved area across the country in supporting Christian grandparents, like grandparents that want to
That's
have
cool.
that impact on their
That's cool.
grandchildren.
So you've had a lot of new beginnings, through your life. I guess in your first marriage, moving a lot. Tony was in the military, so you got new beginnings every 3 or 5 years as you went to new cities, and then a second marriage, and we've moved around a lot ourselves, starting a new business, closing a business, us starting the Lighthouse Collective together, and now this ministry. What is there a moment in starting again, which you've done a lot of, where the outcome, or maybe a few moments, where the outcome was greater than you ever imagined?
Well, when I started Impact to Stay, that's the first thing that jumps out to me. Like
Yeah.
it was hugely successful, I guess, financially.
Yeah.
And it was quite unexpected because, as I mentioned, it was in 2008. And so fast forward to I started the company in October of 2008. By March of 2009, I had made, it wasn't just about the money, but I had made more money in that time frame than I had ever made in a year.
Mhm.
And God blessed that company for many years.
Mhm.
And it was very, very unexpected because I really was just looking to replace my income.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So
So for anyone who's standing right now on the edge of a new beginning, it could be a new business, it could be a new season of life, it could be closing a business, it could be getting married. What encouragement would you share with them?
I would share to just to take that first step. That's the hardest. That's the hardest part. Like is I remember, like in my case, handing in my notice when I had nothing to rely on was pretty scary. And but then once you take that step, then you get more courage after, because now it's you've made that
And you've burnt the ship. So
yes, you burnt the ship. That's the words I was looking for.
yeah. So think back. I know it's been a while now, but think back, and what other sort of intentional steps helped you build momentum, especially in those uncertain, the first days? Like, what things did you do that helped you build momentum?
I talked to people that were encouragers. I
Mm-hmm.
think you need to surround yourself with people that are going to encourage you.
Amen.
And I prayed a lot. I was consistent like every day, even though I was just starting a business.
And you were
And
doing
it
it
was
from
in
home
my
at the
home.
beginning.
It was I had a spare bedroom. It was in my bedroom. Every day I got up, I got dressed like I was going to work, and I went to my office, and I was on the phone. I was working. I was talking to people. Who do you know? And I did that consistently. And I did that consistently for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. And then you gradually grew from a home to having a big room where you and Tasha were together, and
Mhm.
then a office, a small office, and then a bigger office, and I guess actually Impact
Yeah.
Estate got to 4 or 5 employees at one point. So
Yeah.
it was pretty cool.
I had 4 employees. I had the privilege of working with my daughter for one of my daughters for almost the entire. I hired her while she was still in college. And then when she graduated, I needed somebody full time. She wanted to come on board there. And then she worked for me from I think it was 2011 to 2021.
Wow, that's
So
great.
10 years. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about obedience. As a married couple and as individual business people, we've felt called because we walk with God. We felt God telling us to do things, and I would say sometimes we've been obedient, and sometimes we haven't.
Hmm.
We haven't. We've had these tugs at our heart, or point, or the Holy Spirit pointing us in a direction, and sometimes we've ignored it, and other times we've embraced it. Talk to me a little bit about what that's like, with taking action, and maybe share some of the times you have and some of the times you haven't.
Well, I'll start with one thing that jumps out right away is
Mm-hmm.
when towards the end of Impact This Day,
Mm-hmm.
I knew in 2021 that God was leading me to close the company. I
Mm-hmm.
think he really wanted me. I have let it become, it was no longer an instrument for him. It was who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had become Impact This Day. I wasn't, who I was tied up in that company. And there was a lot of pride in there on my side. And he was subtly telling me, I could had these that it was time to close the company.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2021 was like one of my best years.
Right. Yeah.
It was like, no, you don't want me to close the company. Look at all them. And this was another thing. I had gotten this attitude of God's not going to have me close my company. Look at how much money I'm giving away, because I was giving away a lot of money from the company to church and other charities, which is a terrible attitude to have. And so 2022, I didn't listen. I didn't close the company. 2022 came along, and I was even more so, I felt like God was telling me to close the
Mm-hmm.
company. And I even talked about this with my friend Debbie Altman, she's a good friend. And I talked to her about, feeling like maybe God's telling me to close my company, and how the feelings of it's, is he really telling me that? And she gave me some really good advice that, I didn't necessarily listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally by 2023, I finally closed the company. But even, those times up until then, I was in a time of disobedience. And once I closed the company, I feel like, if I had done that sooner, there might have been, I think God had something else for me to do, but I pushed it beyond the time when I should have. Other times of obedience and disobedience were, we had built a home. And you know this story, but not everyone knows this. We had built a home that took 5 years to build, 5 years. And it was our dream home. And we finally got to move into it in 2022. And once again, it was one of those things. I feel like my identity got caught up in this house, and it became like an idol almost. It was like, this is my house, and this is who I am. And uh, as soon as we moved in, the house next door had sold, and we had an obnoxious neighbor that moved in. I mean, obnoxious is not the right word. It's worse than that. But we had this awful neighbor. We tried to live there. This was supposed to be our home was called Southern Serenity, and it was anything but serene because of this neighbor. He was having wild parties till 4 a.m. in the morning, and it was nonstop all through the week. Anyway, I felt right away. I mean, we were only in the house a couple months, and I was calling our realtor and telling him, I feel like we're going to need to sell the house. And I told him, I feel like God is telling me that we need to sell this house. And he sort of questioned me, and he knows my faith. He has the same faith, but he was like, well, I think you should pray about it. Give it a couple months, pray about it. And we kept praying about it, if you remember. And
Mm-hmm.
I kept pushing it. But then finally the following year, in June of 2023, I was there, and we have a home in Maine. Stuart was up in Maine. I had gone down to Florida for a week. I flew back up to Maine. I said, God, I know God's telling us to sell the house. I had just had my devotions where Abraham is told to sacrifice his son Isaac. And it was like, it was just right there in front of me that I wasn't doing what he was telling me to do. And this is a crazy thing. We put our house up for sale in July of 2023 with a close of March 2024. So we couldn't close until March of 2024. And the house had a contract on it within, I think it was 3 weeks for
It was 15 days. Yeah.
above our asking, because we had a bottom line and we had it priced above that. It was above our asking, and it was with a close of March 1st. And it stuck even through a hurricane that hit the house and flooded it. And what we didn't know was what a huge blessing that was, because there was a huge storm that came. And I'm not talking about an actual storm, but a storm in our life that came later in 2023. And it was such a blessing in 2024. Right, but the storm came in 2023 and in 2024, and it was a blessing to have sold that house.
Yeah, it worked out. You're at a point where you're looking at new transitions in your life even now. As your best friend, I would tell you that, sometimes we and I think as we've talked now, it's been interesting. We assign value by how much money we make. And I think that, as you're looking at some new transitions, some of the difficulties are around finding your worth in the mission, not in what you're getting paid to do the mission. And so how are you struggling with that, and how are you finding contentment?
That's been a real challenge. That's been a real challenge, honestly, because as I've mentioned, I've always identified myself in the wrong way. I've identified myself by my job or by my possessions, and actually through these last couple of years, I've come to realize that that's not what my identity is. And my identity is what comes from God. And so the money piece has been a challenge. It's been, once I closed the company, and then I started just volunteering and actually supporting you. And, you've shared that, that's really, you really want that me to be there for you, and how helpful it is. And it's a job. Like, honestly, for those of you that are out there that might think that, being, staying at home isn't a job, it's a full-time job. And I don't even have children at home at this point. For the full-time moms out there,
Mhm.
My goodness, the job that you have, the full-time stay-at-home moms, is a big job. I just want to say thank
Mhm.
you. And
Yeah.
I know that I'm realizing, and I think this is what God's wanting me to realize, is that my identity doesn't come from my paycheck.
No.
My identity comes from Him
Mhm.
and being the best version of myself. And how am I serving Him? And how can I serve Him right now is by being a good grandparent, the best grandparent I can be, by being the best mother, and by being the best wife. And that's
Mhm.
where I and serving my community.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I have talked about spiritual gifts, and I know that you were going through a process where you were praying about what your role is, and you kept hearing, be a support
Yeah,
and
helper.
a helper. And
Yeah.
that's your spiritual gift. And you had to struggle with, and I remember talking to our daughter-in-law, Beth, about
Mhm.
this. You had to struggle with that spiritual gift. It was like you didn't want that one.
Yeah,
and
because we look at spiritual gifts and we go, oh, like the leadership, or there's it's in humanity, oftentimes we assign more value to certain things than others.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're an amazing help, and a great grandmother, great wife, and great mom, and great mother-in-law, apparently. So, um, let's just close off. We do this thing here, at Keep Shining. I want to ask you, who in your life would you say influenced you? Who was the big light in your life?
Well, one person I mentioned earlier that comes to mind is John
Mhm.
Dara, JD,
Yeah.
because he was such, honestly, if he hadn't pushed me that time and
Mhm.
said, that's not a goal. What is your goal? Like, if he hadn't said that to me, and then I didn't mention this, he followed up with me for months after I started. Like, once I said that, like every month he was touching base with me. What have you done to start your business? And then when I started it, still following up to see how things were. And he still followed up periodically through the time that I owned the business. And I mean, he's a dear friend of ours.
Mhm.
And even now, like, I don't have the business anymore, but it's always like, how are you doing? Like, he just really, I mean, as you know, we're in a Bible study with John, and he just he has been a true light.
That's cool. That's cool. So if you could leave the listeners with one truth about new beginnings, what would that be?
Take that first step.
That's a good one.
It's scary, but
Mhm.
do it anyway.
It's funny. You and I, he was in episode 2 of Keep Shining, Be a Light. Daryl Black, who's our teaching pastor at our church, and I remember you and I listening to a sermon that he did, and he said the the gap between hearing what God's telling you to do and actually doing it is called disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
His I think the sermon was titled "Do the Next Thing." Do the
Mm-hmm.
next thing. Take that step. Do the next thing. So our other tradition here at Keep Shining, Be a Light is that the previous guest has left a question for you, not knowing who is going to answer it. So your question, Deb, is if you had to inspire someone, what would you inspire them to do?
That's a good question. And it sort of just goes back to what we've been talking about here. If they have something that's in them that they feel like that's their calling,
Mm-hmm.
then and they've been hesitating to do it because either they don't feel qualified or they don't have the knowledge, just take that first step. Step
That's right.
out, step out in faith and just take that first step.
It's faith and courage. Do the next thing.
Mm-hmm. I love that what you said about I was thinking about Daryl when you said that.
Yeah, do
Yeah.
the next thing. So finally, what question are you going to leave for the next guest?
What would you say to your younger self when you were just starting out on your career path?
What would you say to your younger self when you're just starting your career. Okay, we will nail that one down.
Mhm.
Well, I want to thank you for doing this. It's kind of unusual for a couple to do this, and it's been really fun. It's a chance to remind people about new beginnings, to embrace change and new beginnings, to do the next thing. It reminds us that new beginnings don't erase what happened before. As a matter of fact, new beginnings typically build on what happened before. So to everyone listening to this, I hope that this year you do step into new beginnings. You obey, you're obedient to that which is, what God's telling you to do, that you take the next step and do the next thing. And so I will close off with thanks again, Deb. Keep
Thank you.
shining and be a light.